Welcome to Quantum Journeys, a podcast where we explore the fascinating intersections of neuroscience, hypnosis, quantum physics, and the metaphysical. In this mind-bending journey, we will delve into the depths of the human mind, exploring the extraordinary abilities that lie dormant within each of us. We'll uncover the hidden connections between our thoughts, our emotions, and our created realities, and discover how to harness these connections to alchemize a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. Welcome to the Quantum Journeys podcast, where we explore the intersectionality of hypnosis, neuroscience, multidimensional consciousness, and all sorts of other interesting phenomenon. I'm Krista Marie Bowman, founder of Quantum Journeys Hypnosis, and today we have Stephanie Conkle, who has been a huge mentor in my own life. Stephanie is an award-winning clinical hypnotherapist, creator of the world-renowned Profound Somnambulism Protocol, or PSP, and try to say that 5 times fast. Profound Somnambulism Protocol. I tripped over it the first time. She also specializes in multidimensional consciousness work, where she navigates the intersections of science and spirituality. And she is directly responsible for some of the most profound conversations I've had with my own multidimensional consciousness. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it weren't for you, honestly. Did you know that, Stephanie?
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
well, that's
we'll
an
talk
honor.
about
Thank
that.
you. Okay.
So yes, even hypnotherapists have their own hypnotherapists. And so let's start there, shall we? I think I would love to find out how you got into this, because originally your first initiations into hypnosis weren't of the more woo variety, were they?
Correct. No, they weren't. And I was very much like, don't even like woo me at all. There's no woo coming into my sessions. This is all brain-based, it's scientific, it's factual, it's left brain, whatever. But there's no, it's not spiritual. It's, I don't even want to and I saw other hypnotists like in my area who would advertise as a spiritual hypnotist. And I'd be like, ugh, oh, they're just like really pulling down the industry. they're giving me a bad name. Nobody's going to take me seriously. Right. So it was all of that misconceptions that I had.
That you had yourself.
Right?
Yeah.
All that judgment that I was doing. And I was sort of buying into, what my trainers had been telling me, to stay away from all of the spiritual woo-woo, because this is all brain-based and you don't want to scare away people and that kind of thing. So we can begin with, I did not have a deep spiritual belief in this.
So that's interesting. So it's not just that you were trained to not sort of take on that perception, but you yourself didn't have a spiritual foundation.
And I had a spiritual, I had a Christian spiritual foundation.
Okay.
But I didn't
have...
So
like your upbringing?
Yeah, my upbringing.
Okay.
But not, but nothing like that I considered as woo-woo.
Right. Well, and I came into hypnosis with a background in applied psychology, which is like not the fluffy kind of psychology. It's not talking to people about their problems. It's like, people are going to hate me for saying this, but it's like, putting laboratory animals into impossible situations and then testing to see what happens.
Ouch.
Yeah. But that was where I came from. So I also had that, hardcore science all the way when I first kind of went into this. So I'm not going to talk about how I got into it, at least not today, but I want to find out. So how did you go from the clinical neuroscience only into starting to incorporate some of this other, I guess what people would maybe call metaphysical stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I had a personal spiritual awakening. So we'll start there.
Ooh, this sounds juicy.
Yeah, and it was later in life, in my 30s. So I really had that. I was raised Catholic. And I have nothing bad to say about the Catholic Church or the church that I was raised in. I wasn't abused by a priest or
Right.
you know, anything like that. And in fact, I'm sort of grateful that I had like a spiritual place to go to once a week. My parents were pretty strict about us having to attend church or mass every Sunday, and then sometimes Wednesdays for like teen youth group and stuff like that. But it was very religion was a very important part of my family, and I got into sort of the religious aspects of it because I'm also Italian, and
Oh,
Italian
yeah.
Catholics we just mix religion and family and everything together. There is just like no separation. So it's all, when you have a wedding, it's a mass in a wedding. When you have a funeral, it's a funeral mass. It's all
It's all
connected.
tied together.
It's all tied together. I have a cousin who is, not only is she a nun, but she was the prioress of her monastery for like 15 years or something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
Now she's kind of retired from that, but she's still a nun. Um,
That's
and
pretty hardcore.
It's so hardcore, so hardcore. So this is like how hardcore, I'm going to say religious, my family was religious, but also very judgmental and very much like, we're going to keep it in this Catholic framework, and we are not to go outside that framework. On
Did you
penalty,
go outside of it?
on penalty of hell, right?
Right,
Penalty
right,
of
right.
hell if you go outside that. So it makes you kind of scared. So it's sort of this fear-based, religion in a way. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so also I'm a deep thinker. And I just kept, after I had my first child, I just kept thinking like, if God is this loving, almighty, omniscient person who can understand everything from every aspect, why would there be a need for a hell? Hell is eternal punishment, right? Like eternal, infinite, it never ends, never ending torture. That doesn't sound like a parent to me. That doesn't sound like a
Yeah,
loving father, right?
right.
Or loving mother. Like for my own children, yes, they get punished, but that's so they can learn a lesson to help them
To help
in
them
their
become
growing.
better, understand, yeah, all the
Right. So
stuff,
they don't run out into the
evolve
street
and
and get hit by
grow
a car, right? Or
right.
whatever. But it's
Yeah.
not forever. It's a limited amount of time where they can think about what they did, and then they have time to, apologize or make up for it or do better in the future or whatever. And even if they make the same mistakes, they don't, oh, you've made the same mistake twice. All right. I'm gonna
That's
lock you
it.
in your
Off
bedroom
with your head
forever.
forever and ever and ever and
I'm gonna
ever.
burn you on fire, and I'm gonna have like a little demon like whipping you or something.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like
Terrifying.
a very loving parent. You're accurate. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and I just kept thinking about hell. Like that was just, I was perseverating on the notion of hell, and just like it can't exist. I just don't believe it. I just can't believe, if God exists and God is love, which I do believe, hell
Hmm.
can't exist. It just can't, you know?
Hmm.
And and also so I was sort of thinking about that, but I was also at the same time getting a lot into psychology as well, and reading a lot about the brain. And for a little period of time there, I was even agnostic, and maybe I don't know if I was ever fully atheist, but I was definitely like agnostic.
Hmm.
But being agnostic let me sort of like throw off the shackles of Catholicism, right?
Yeah,
So that I
yeah.
could build up a new belief
It
system.
liberated you so that
It
you could
liberated
start
me.
to perceive things in a different way. Yeah.
It liberated me. And I'm very, very grateful. I want to emphasize this. I'm very grateful for my spiritual upbringing. Um, it wasn't for me, but it served a purpose.
Hmm.
And I have
And you
only
wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't had those
I would,
experiences.
right, correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
I'm very appreciative. And I believe that whatever religion you're in, if you're spiritual and you really seek God in whatever your belief of God is, you will find it just by
Hmm.
the intention of seeking it. And for some people, that's where it is. It's like, okay, it's the Catholic Church, or it's whatever church you belong to. This is where I had this relationship with the higher creator, with the
Hmm.
source. whatever, and however you imagine that source to be, it's not going to be anyway. It's not whatever you can
Or maybe
imagine.
it's
It's
all
not
of it,
right, because it's all of
Yeah,
it. So that's why you
right,
really can't imagine it. So it doesn't matter what you imagine, is what I'm, like
right.
you want to say that Jesus is completely God and that's your version of God, and you're living a beautiful life, and you're, helping people, and you're really trying to follow his precepts, go for it. That's great.
Mhm.
You're going to have a wonderful life. I just
Yeah.
got to the point where it's like, I just can't. Once I started to know the truth, I was like, I just can't continue doing something that
Kind of like you were
doesn't.
having a bit of an existential
I was
crisis.
having a, yeah, for sure. All right, but then like the woo-woo stuff started happening.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
first woo-woo thing that happened was so my best friend and I, she was my best friend since sixth grade. We had our children, our first two were born within like a week of each other. Um, like her, and she had a daughter and a son, and I had a daughter and a son, and all four of them were born in January.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the same year. Well, the girls
Quite the
in one year, the boys in
coincidence.
another year. But anyway, it's so interesting how we're like connected that way. But anyways, as we were growing up, she lived in the same neighborhood, and my mom worked all the time and traveled. I hardly ever saw her growing up, especially during my high school days. But her mom always was like a second mom to me. And I was
Mhm.
always over at their house all the time. And I had long conversations with her mom and all of this kind of stuff.
So you had like a
Well,
surrogate mom in her,
kind of like a
sounds like.
surrogate mom. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Um, but what ended up happening with her mom was that she ended up getting cancer. First she had breast cancer. She overcame that, but then she got leukemia, and she ended up dying from leukemia.
Mm.
And it was
Sorry.
right after it was like she died about maybe 6 months after the girls were born. So my friend was going through some deep postpartum depression. And I was
And
too.
losing
I
her
didn't even
mom.
like realize that until later. But we both were going through some like severe postpartum depression. And so one night I fell asleep, and I'm dreaming that I'm a ghost. I'm dreaming that I'm a ghost. Which is odd. And it's like, oh, this is what a ghost is like. So there's this, um, like if you're kind of stuck on the earth plane. In my dream, I saw this clear jelly-like substance, okay, that was preventing me from interacting with the world, because I would see people and I can go right up to them and I could be like, hey, look at me, listen to me. And they couldn't hear me at all because it
Mm.
couldn't go through like that jelly-like thing. So first of all,
Ectoplasm?
do I?
Was it ectoplasm, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was. It might have been like I could kind of push my hand through it, that my hand kind of could go through it, but then, but I couldn't fully go through it to
Right.
get to the other side. Um, all right. Also in this dream, so that was one part of the dream. So one part of the dream, I'm a ghost. Another part of the dream, I'm sitting, so weird. It was like at my high school, which I hate it, but in my high school gym, and the gym was two levels, and there was like a track on the upper level. So, but there were
Mhm.
stairs going from the bottom level to the upper level, and I'm sitting on the stairs between levels, right?
That's very
And
symbolic.
it is very symbolic. And my friend and my sister and my friend's mother, all four of us were sitting on those stairs, and we were just talking and laughing and having a conversation. Um, And I kind of got that out of order because that's the part of the dream that I had first. The second part of the dream, it was like that I was the ghost. I reached my hand through the thing, um, and then my husband held my hand.
Mm.
And then I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. Then I thought I was really dead. I woke up screaming, and I said, am I dead? Am I dead? Are you dead? And I woke my husband up and I said, are you dead? Are you dead?
Oh
Like
my gosh.
that really happened.
What was his response?
Obviously he was shocked awake, like what
Like,
the F, like what? And I was like, oh,
Not as far as I know, still alive. Let me
I was like,
check.
okay, you're alive. I'm alive. I didn't know who was dead. I was like, someone's dead. I'm alive. You're alive. So I was like, never mind, go back to sleep. So I'm laying there trying to fall back asleep. And I think it's summer, but it's freezing cold in my room. Like I am so cold. I'm shivering. I cannot get warm. I'm putting all these blankets on me. It's like this cold spot was over me. Um,
Mm.
so so I get out of bed and I go down to the kitchen, and now I'm like sort of in this trance. I mean, I am in a trance. And I just have this feeling like you need to, it was my friend's mother. She was like, you need to send Megan an email for me. I have things to say to her. That is
Wow.
that is what I felt. Okay. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I'll just tell her that I had this dream about her mom. So I'm typing to her and excuse me. And I'm telling her about the dream. And then I'm starting to dictate, like I'm kind of doing this like automatic typing, and I'm dictating what her mom is
Wow.
saying. And I'm
So you're
like,
like channeling her mother.
I'm channeling her mother and I'm
Yeah.
typing out, and it's just stuff that she needed to hear, like I'm okay and
Hmm.
I love you and whatever. I can't even remember what all she
The
said,
key to
but
the
it was
safe to deposit box is in the utility drawer. No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
But I also said, because she showed me the dream, and I said, "Oh, she also wants your dad to know that when he's sitting in his office, in his home office, there is a recorder sitting on his desk, and she turns that on to let him know that she's there. And she wants him to know that every time that she sees when he secretly holds his hand out to pretending like he's holding her hand, she wants him to know that she is really holding his hand."
Wow.
So I type all of this stuff out, right?
Hmm. And
And
what did
so,
your friend, what was her response when she received
exactly
this?
right. So I send it, I go to bed. The next day, I don't hear anything from her at all. And now I'm like really nervous because I didn't hear anything the next day. And I'm going like,
Hmm.
oh my God, I just brought up like her dead mother. She's still grieving. I probably just emotionally shattered my best friend, and now she's gonna, like she's gonna hate me. I can't believe I did that. What was that even real? What was I even doing? Now I feel stupid. All of these thoughts
All, yeah,
going on in my
all the
mind.
self-doubt and yeah. Hmm.
Self-doubt, and I shouldn't have done that, and I feel stupid. And now I'm trying to kind of like, oh, should I avoid her now? I'm going into that like fight, flight, or I'm in the flight mode, like you
Right,
know.
right.
So, but the following day, the phone rings and her name pops up. And I'm like, part of me is like, I don't want to answer it. But then I was like, I just pull the band-aid off, just rip it off and just get on with
And
it,
it's not like you can really avoid her. You're neighbors and you've known each other since sixth grade. So
Right, right, right. We've known each other since sixth grade. Well, we're not neighbors
right,
now, but we were growing up. Um, but yeah, she's my best friend since sixth grade.
right, right.
So I answer the phone and we're kind of chatting for a little bit. And I'm thinking like, okay, we're just talking.
Maybe she didn't get it.
Maybe she didn't get it. Maybe
Yeah,
I went to
yeah.
told her or something like that. And then she goes, "Oh, that email that you sent me?" I was like, "Crap." Yes. And she was just like, "Well, I just want to let you know that I was suffering from really bad postpartum depression, and I was planning on killing myself. I was just going to take a bottle of pills if my husband didn't get home by 5 o'clock." So she waited till 5 o'clock. Her husband wasn't home. So she went in, she was going to the kitchen to swallow a bottle of pills, and she passed her computer and she said she had the thought, just check your emails one last time. And when she went to check her emails, the first email that popped up was the one that I sent from her mother.
From her mother.
Yeah.
So her mother probably, I'm guessing, was the one who said, check your emails one last time.
Oh yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure of it.
yeah.
And it so her mother intervened through me to save her life is
Right.
how I feel. She actually also forwarded that email to her dad, and her dad confirmed everything that I said. He said that his
Wow.
recorder does go off on occasion, and that he does pretend like he's holding her hand, her mom's hand, from time
And
to
so
time.
now you're knee deep in the metaphysical after trying so
Right.
hard to avoid it.
So now I'm knee deep in it. And because that happened to me, it was like a light bulb got turned on for the other side, because they're like, oh, this is a light worker. We can come to her and she can deliver messages to other people. And
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, because I have like a baby and I'm whatever. I was like, I couldn't deal with it. I had too much
Right.
going on. And so I was like, I can't, all these spirits just keep like, and I can't, I want to help them all, but I can't because I can barely help myself right now, you know?
Yeah.
And so then I started watching James Von Prague. I don't know if you know who he
I
is, but
don't. Mm-mm.
he's an older gentleman, and at the time he had a show on that he would help children who had spiritual abilities to develop
Okay.
them. He's like a medium is what he is.
Okay.
Um, and so I was like, okay, well, James Bond. So I had seen that show, and
Did
I'm
he
like, I know,
help them to get control over it so they could turn
yeah,
it up or down depending on their
yeah,
needs? Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, okay, I
I
need
had to
this.
learn how to do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know what to do. This was like new
Yeah.
territory for me. So I
Right.
started following him and watching his podcast, and stuff like that. And in his podcast, he had mentioned, if you want to know more, because I was really wanting to learn more about the spiritual world and the life between lives and all of that. And he said, read Dolores Cannon's book, the life life after life or something like that. I can't remember the exact. Do you
I'll look
remember
it up.
what I'm talking about? Okay. And so that's kind of how I got into Dolores Cannon. Um, and all right, but kind of rewind a little bit. I was seeing clients, and I was getting, um, I was just, like I said, I was just like doing like the normal, typical hypnotherapy that everyone
Hmm.
was taught.
Right.
And but in my experience, I was able to get like, tap into the higher consciousnesses, but I didn't know how I was doing it,
Right.
right? And I didn't know how to repeat it.
I don't think it was necessarily you doing it, is
Oh, well,
what,
no, it totally wasn't me at
right.
all.
Yeah. Because when it started happening with me too, I was like, I was actively trying not to do that
Yeah,
sometimes. I feel like, why do we keep ending up in somebody's other lifetime? I'm just trying to do hypnosis.
right. Yeah, and as far as like the past life regression, I was doing past life regressions, but I didn't really believe it at that time. I was like, I don't mind doing it because whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter because it's coming from the subconscious. And if it comes from the
Mhm.
subconscious, then it's going to be healing. And whatever the client wants to believe, it's their belief. It's not, I
Right.
don't have to
Yeah.
believe it. But
The
it's not
Dolores
going to
Cannon book, I think I
turn.
might have just found it. Was it Between Death and Life?
Yeah,
Is that the one?
maybe that was it. I just know that it was
Okay.
her first book, and I was just trying to understand more
Right.
about this spiritual world, about what happens to you, what really
As
happens
far
to
as
you.
we know. Yeah.
As
Yeah.
we know, as far as we know. But I really trusted James Von Prague, so I didn't think he would lead me astray with Dolores
Right.
Cannon. And then I saw that I was like, what? She's a hypnotherapist? I didn't even know that. And she was doing past life regressions, and then she was getting the direct voice, and she was
Mhm.
doing it in her own particular way with
Just for
QHHT.
the viewers and listeners that don't know what that means, direct voice is.
Direct voice is when the subconscious or the higher self sort of like channels through the client and speaks about the client as if they
Mhm,
were
like the third
separate
person.
from
Yeah.
the person, even though it is the person, it's just different levels of consciousness of the person. This can get like very deep and convoluted, but
Right. But I just wanted people to understand, like, if they're like, what does that mean? Direct voice. So,
right. So
yeah.
direct voice is
And it could
where
be different aspects of the person's consciousness, but
it
they
could.
speak of the human incarnation of that person, typically in the third person.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
and why is Stephanie doing this? Stephanie is doing this because, da 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 da, right? But
Right.
it'll
Like
be
I would,
coming out of Stephanie's mouth.
right, right. Like
Right,
I would
right,
talk
right,
to myself about myself in third person.
right.
But under deep trance, under profound somnambulism is what I call it. And I knew that. So, okay. So I guess kind of like how you saw something about me that kind of put some puzzles together for your
Mm-hmm,
stuff. I saw something that Dolores Cannon was doing that kind of put puzzle pieces together for what
mm-hmm.
I was doing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is kind of like and I
Yep.
love to give credit where credit is due. But what she was doing, which is fine, there's like no right or wrong way. It's whatever way you're called to do it and you're moved to do it. But she was taking people through their past lives and taking them through their death scenes and all of that. And, my practice is in Holly Spring, Georgia. I'm like, I can't take people through through all of these. They're not signing up for past life regression sessions. Maybe if I
Right.
was in downtown Atlanta, I could do that. But I'm in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
People in Holly Springs aren't gonna be asking for that, but I need to figure out how to do this direct voice. So I was like, okay, let me workshop this until I figure it out. How can we get direct voice without it going through past lives, without going through the death scene, without, all of that? And the kind of what I figured out was as long as the person is sort of in that space before they were born, because she was bringing them to like the space after they died. But the space
Mm.
after they died and the space before they were born is the same space.
The life between lives
The
space.
life
Yes.
between lives. So I was like, okay, what if I regress people back to before they were born and I got them there
Right. Yep.
instead of them having to relive a death scene in
Go
a
through
past
it.
life and
Right.
all of
Yeah.
that, right? Would that
Yeah.
work? And so I started workshopping and doing different things, and that actually worked. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I was able to do that, get the direct voice. And then I just started experimenting with other things, how to get people deep enough to get to that level. Um, and are there other ways that you can get direct voice? Are there other ways to get
Well, I
people?
have found a different way as well, but
Yeah,
I use part of your induction because your induction for a pronoun somnambulism is the section that I use does get them into that really deep state of trance almost
yeah,
across the board. And even if
cool.
they're still observing a little bit,
Yeah,
it pulls that like analytical part of them out enough that
yeah,
it doesn't intrude. But then I get direct voice in a completely different way. I don't take them into pre-birth or death.
right.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, I
It,
don't even do that anymore. I do.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So
I
we
don't, but
have
that's how I
we
started.
evolve. We always
We
evolve. Yeah,
evolve, right? We
yeah.
evolve.
Mhm.
But that's just where my thought process went,
Right. Yeah.
you
Gotcha.
know. Um, and it's not
And
even
that's what
necessary.
Michael Newton does also.
Yeah,
Uh, the to some degree. I think he does
he
a little
goes
bit of both, but anyway, yeah, to get to the life
right. I
between
mean,
lives. Yeah.
and then also just so I'm not bored, there's different things that I started experimenting with, bringing them through portals, you know,
Yep.
like, oh, that would be really quick. We don't have to go through a past life. Hey, there's a portal, and now you're on the
Yeah,
other
exactly.
side. You
Boom,
know,
there you are.
boom,
Yes.
you're there, right?
Yep. And that's
And
closer to what I do. I
is that
have they
closer
go
to what you
to they
do?
go well, they go to the hallway of answers.
Oh, yeah. So the
But
hall,
so
yeah.
we leave off with your part at the happy safe place. And then
Okay.
that's where quantum journeys hypnosis picks up is from
Oh, I see. And
there.
then you take them through
And
the
then we go
hallway.
to the hallway of answers and then whatever doorways show up and like then
It's so
in
I'll
order to
use.
get direct voice, I'll say, I want your highest self to point out which doorway we need to go through. And as soon as they know
Oh,
which doorway it is, they're like, oh, well, that's confirmation that my higher self is here.
oh, that's
Because it
cool. I
pointed it
like that.
out.
So
So
I'll
yeah.
use a hallway, but I use the hallway when I do past life regression. Like when a client
To
wants
go to a
past life
different life.
regression, then I'll take them down the hallway and then they choose the door, whatever door they go through is whatever
Gotcha.
life they enter.
Right.
So yeah. So there's, many ways to skin a cat, as my grandmother always said.
There'll be no skinning of cats in this podcast, just so you know.
No skinning of cats. I love
Speaking to
cats.
the
I
listeners.
have I've always had cats my whole life. I love cats, but that is just an old Southern
Right,
expression.
yep.
Um, but there's many ways, and it's really the intention. And I really feel like if you're called to do this work, you're gonna be guided on how to do it.
Whether you necessarily want to do it or not,
Whether
if
you
it's
necessarily want to
or
do it or not.
consciously, right? Because there's like an
Right.
agreement I think we've made at some other level where we're like, okay, we're going to do this work in this lifetime. And then whether or
Yeah.
not we consciously know that that's what's about to happen. I remember the very first session I had where somebody just like blip started channeling something else. And I was like, oh, I wasn't trained to do this. I'm not sure what's happening here.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And the first couple of times it happens, and especially when you're not aware of what's happening, it's terrifying. It's
Yeah,
scary. And you have
it
to
can be a
act
little right. It can be a little bit just discombobulating, right? It's just like, oh,
yeah. And you
okay.
have to act like, okay, I'm the professional. I know what I'm doing here. And you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What do I do next? But
Mostly I would just get really curious because I didn't know
yeah,
what was, so I would just be like, so why are we doing this? Who's showing up? What's the
yeah,
purpose here? I just would drop all pretense because I was just like, I'm out of my like
yeah,
league. Like, I don't know what's good. Like, yeah, I was in
right.
too deep,
What I did know though
using
was,
metaphors.
and which I've never done, which I was taught to do, which I've never done, I've never waked them up out of trance or
Yeah, no, me
hypnotic
either.
trance.
Not
Even if
intentionally ever.
even if they had reactions, anything like that, you don't wake them up. They're where they're supposed to be, and you work with whatever comes up. So I
Absolutely.
did some Ericksonian training, and that was probably the best training as far as just learning the basics of hypnosis. Once I got into Milton Erickson. And what I really learned from him is just to be present in the moment, hold space, and see what comes up, because every single person is going to be different. It's not cookie cutter,
Right.
right? But if you can just really be present, really listen to them, listen, be focused on them, have the intention that you want to help them, then and just be open to helping them, trust in your own subconscious,
Yep.
then you never have to be scared of this. You'll always know what
I
to
totally
say. You'll
agree.
always know what to do. You incorporate what they're telling you into the practice, right? And so that they feel safe and you've got rapport with them.
And
But
they found you for a reason.
right,
They were
I believe that.
drawn to work with you. Maybe it was the sound of your voice. Maybe it was something that you said. Maybe it was just an internal pulling. So,
Yeah.
there's already on an energetic level, I guess you could say, already some rapport
I believe
and
that
really
too.
just like building on
I
that.
believe
Yeah. Yeah.
anyone that is working with me is supposed to be working with me. And I
Yeah.
actually I say a prayer about that as well. I'm always like, please, source, universe, send me whoever I can help,
Yeah.
if I can help them, and that we have good rapport with each other too, because even though I can help someone, I don't want them to like show up as a jerk or something either.
Right.
I want to
Yes.
like have fun and have connect and help them. And it's like, and if I'm not the right person or if I can't help them, then send them to someone else who can.
Mhm.
Or if no one can help them, I'm willing to show up and you speak through me. So I've
Ah,
learned how to sort of like just channel my own higher self, because I don't know the
beautiful.
answers. And it's just
Right.
takes a huge leap of faith, a huge
Yeah.
act of trust to show up. But it works every time. And it's just one of those, you just got to show up and trust, and the universe will do everything for you.
First
Because
surrender to it. Yeah. Giving
surrender
up the
to it.
control, that ego-based control, and then it
Yeah.
just allows it to flow. I
Even when I've
120% agree. Absolutely.
even when I've had best laid plans, oh, this is what the client wants to see me for. So I'm going to do this and this protocol, and I'm going to follow it by this. I'm going to do that. I've had to throw out the window and not
Yeah.
do any of it once I got present with them to see what they really needed. And I was like, oh, if I had done that,
It wouldn't have
would have
worked.
gotten
Yeah.
what they needed. I really had to be very present and very aware and trusting, and then everything, of course, that was happening before my eyes in my office, they weren't, they're not making it up. These are people from Holly Springs, Georgia, or Canton, Georgia, or
Right.
whatever, they're not, they're just normal working class or business class people or whatever, but
Right.
they're not, I mean, they're not scam artists.
Right.
They don't
And
even
what
know
would be
what's
the
going to
purpose
happen.
of that anyway? Let me pay you money so that I can come in and scam you to believe
Exactly.
something that I am making up for what like really,
And what really
so
convinced me was having them wake up with amnesia, not
yeah,
even, about half of them will wake up with amnesia, and not even know that they were talking to me in third person, like that their subconscious was talking to me. And they were saying all these profound things that I could not even, there, even if there's someone there who was a creative writer or historian,
right, but the stuff they come up with, yeah,
stuff that they come up
absolutely.
with, the details, especially when I take them into past lives and the details that they come up with and stuff, it's like, oh, you can't, it's not something you can learn in a book,
Yeah.
you know?
I had
Um,
somebody who just out of absolutely nowhere started channeling an extraterrestrial,
yeah,
and the information coming through her mouth was not like she wasn't even using vocabulary that she normally would use in day-to-day life. And so I was like, yeah, there's no question that this is absolutely
yeah,
what's happening here,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
pretty interesting.
That's so cool. And now I love it. It's cool. It's fun. It makes my job interesting. I'm not
Yeah.
just doing the same boring old stuff over and over again, and I don't want to be just the one talking the whole time. I like having back and
Yeah.
forth
Yeah.
dialogue.
Well, and I mean, this is something that's come up quite a few times in this particular podcast, and I'm sure that you'll agree because we've talked about this, so
Yeah,
I know you'll agree, but that everybody actually has the ability to heal themselves. However, we sometimes need somebody to facilitate the conversation. And so
absolutely.
you're tapping into the parts of them that have the resources, and it could
Hmm.
come from any aspect of their consciousness or within their physical body or wherever, right? But you're the one who's helping to facilitate that conversation, because it's really
Right.
difficult to do it for yourself, having to be both the present cognitive analytical mind and also the one who's experiencing all these like amazing metaphysical things.
Absolutely. And there's definitely ways you can get there, if you want to try it on your own. I think it's easier just to come to you.
Yeah, yep, or you, yep.
Right.
Yeah, so you're like my hypnotherapist on virtual speed dial. Like when I am reaching a place where I'm like, I can't seem to break through this thing, I better book a session with Stephanie.
Thank you. And I also have sessions with you, and I'm doing a session with you after this podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I'm so glad that we found each other to do that with.
yeah,
Yeah, I
likewise.
mean, when you helped me, I mean, this might be going a little too far on the podcast, but I've already opened my mouth, so I'm going to say it. But when you helped me have a conversation with the higher consciousness of my mother, that absolutely blew me away, because we've always had a very complicated relationship here in this earth incarnation. But on the other side, we are the best of friends. And
Yeah.
we're constantly like, hey, you did a great job in that last life. Maybe it's my turn to play the bad guy, And I
Right.
was just like, it was so real and so visceral. And I was like laughing with her. And it was like almost like when you're in a play and then the curtain closes and then the person that you just killed, you're high-fiving them.
Yeah.
Obviously
Yeah.
there's no death in this, but I'm like metaphorically
Yeah.
speaking,
That's a perfect
Hamlet or
analogy.
something,
Like
and then
you go
high-fiving them.
through
And
the
that's what it
play,
felt like.
yeah. The evil villain in the play, then you go
Right.
get drinks with them afterwards or whatever. Right?
Yeah. And it just
The cast
changed
party.
like
Right.
that healed so much, just that one. And that's not even what we were going for. I can't even remember what the session was for, but it wasn't that. That just happened because that's where my higher consciousness was like, here's where she needs to go to get the healing she needs for this other thing. It has to do with this. And as soon as I experienced all of that, it cracked things wide open for me. I
Yeah.
accelerated my understanding, my healing, my wisdom, my acceptance, my compassion, my empathy, my everything, like 100-fold in
Yeah.
one single session. It was amazing.
Oh,
And then
yay.
we had another session. I
Love
think it
that.
was a different one. Maybe it was the same one where I started speaking with the consciousness of amethyst crystal. And I was like, if that isn't as woo gets, like I was embarrassed after that. I was like, I can't
I
believe
forgot about that.
I
That's
was
awesome. I love that.
communicating with crystals, like really. And it was just hanging out with me. I think it even had a name. I don't remember what it is now, but I just kept, and I was like, what are you doing here? This is my hypnosis session. Like, why are you? And it's like, hey, I'm here to help. I'm like,
Right, right.
okay, Stephanie, I have to tell you something. There's a crystal following us around.
Okay, I think I'm remembering this now. Yeah.
I haven't even watched that one again because it was
Yeah.
so weird. And I was almost embarrassed at just how
Oh.
very like woo-woo it got.
Well, it was
Because
what you
I still
needed.
like to think of myself as being like 1 foot in science and 1 foot in the woo, but that session was pure woo through and through.
And that's fine. And I've learned to come to acceptance with woo and make peace with
Yeah.
it, because this is where we're going. The whole earth is
Well,
shifting.
clearly I have by now, because hello,
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah,
right? But
for
yeah, at the
sure.
time it was pretty, I was still, I was half in the closet, half out, I think, at the time, the
Yeah,
woo closet. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm out of the woo closet now, but
Yep.
it did
High
take some
five,
like
sister. I'm
high
so
five.
glad.
It did take some like kicking and screaming to get there, but I'm finally here, and it's like, oh, this is not as scary as I thought it would be. It's
Right.
fine. It's great. In fact, I love it. In fact, I prefer it here.
Yeah.
You know.
I had to get over some old persecution complex stuff, because apparently I was killed in several other lifetimes for the more
Yeah.
spiritual work that I was doing. And I imagine that's probably the case with most of us.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we have a tendency to like play small for a while
Yeah.
until it gets too uncomfortable to stay that small. Like that's what happened. It wasn't even like I was like, hey, I think I'm going to go do all this stuff now. It was more like my higher self was like, okay, we're nudging you, but if
Yeah.
you don't go, we're going to just take you and toss you in the deep end. So what's your choice,
Right.
Krista? And sometimes I would be like,
Karma. So.
no. And then other times I was like, so yeah, I've learned the hard way, as you probably have as well,
Yeah.
that you just kind of got to go with it.
I remember before becoming a hypnotist, and after I had already quit corporate. That was a nightmare. And I was in this in-between stage. I was staying at home with babies. And I'm like, ooh, having that postpartum depression. Doing some like
I
trying to
went
do
through that too.
self-help. I got to self-help books because I didn't know what was wrong with me. And at
Right.
that time, like now everybody kind of knows what postpartum depression is, but at the time people didn't really know. We were still figuring it out. I was like, what's wrong with me? But what I really felt like, I need to get back to work. I needed to just for the money anyway. I needed to supplement our income. My husband was working 2 jobs at the time and not seeing the kids. And I was like, okay, I need to like take the load off of him.
Right.
So I need to do something. And actually started off life coaching for a little bit. But I remember thinking like, I'm not doing my life's purpose. I knew that. I knew I wasn't. I'm like, I
You
don't
could
know
feel
what
it.
my life's purpose is, but I'm not doing it. I'm ready to do it. I was getting to the point where I was like almost in tears, like I want to be doing my purpose. And I remember praying, and at the time it was the Catholic God, and I remember saying, "All right,
I think
Lord."
the message still gets through just fine.
It still
Yep.
it still got through.
Yeah.
It still got through. It had to go through, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever to get to ours, but it went through that channel. And so I was like, please, I'm ready to do my life's purpose. Please put me on my life's path, what I'm supposed to be doing. I will accept whatever you give me, no matter how strange it is, no matter what I have to do, I will accept it. I remember saying that. Had no idea in my mind whatsoever that hypnosis was going to be my life's path.
Wow.
Spiritual hypnosis or any other kind of hypnosis, because because
Mhm.
at that time, all hypnosis was weird, was weird. And just the way that hypnosis even came into my life, I think was miraculous. And I do feel like this was the plan for my life all along. And I can feel it. And I can feel when I'm not doing it, when I'm not on my life's path, when I'm procrastinating and I'm too lazy and I'm not taking those chances that I'm supposed to take. I feel it in
Mhm.
my soul. But when I'm doing it, when I'm on the path, I'm doing the calling, I feel energized. And that's how I
Mhm.
know if I'm going in the right direction or not.
Right. Right.
How energized do I feel about this? How passionate? Even in my work, I'm actually taking another leap, and next month I'm raising my prices again. And I not mean dramatically, like at least by twice.
Mm.
I'm at least doubling my prices, and maybe even more than that. And it's like, oh, this is kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's really scary to go in and do this, but also I feel like it's what I'm being called to do. And
Well, and
also,
I feel like it's long overdue too, because you are an expert at what you do. You're a master at what you do, you know? And I think that most people, if they had known what your prices were, that, you know, people that are
yeah,
in the field, they would be
right.
like, Stephanie, that's not nearly enough. You're making us look bad, woman. Raise your
Oh,
prices.
I was still in that old model though of,
Yeah,
I want to make sure everyone can afford me so I can help as
right.
many people as I can. But then that leads to burnout and
Yeah.
it leads to like resentment. I mean, not really,
And then
and
you're not able to give your full to the
yeah,
people that are coming to you. And I have that model where I have them high enough so that they're the people that really can't afford me that I do want to help. Well, there's a buffer there now. So I
yeah,
can, you know, and I can
right,
have them like at a lower rate or, you know, something sliding scale, a few a month. So I
yeah,
can still do that. But that means that I have to charge this much over here, you know.
right, for sure.
But we get
Yeah,
better results too because people are far more committed
right.
when they put their money where their mouth is instead of what is it called? The tire kickers. They're like,
Yes,
well, if you
yeah.
can force me to do the thing while I'm hypnotized, then I guess I'll go. But I'm not
Right.
paying for it. And it's like, that's not my job. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I want people who are already motivated, who are
right.
already all in, who have already
Yeah.
convinced themselves that this is
Yeah.
right for them. I don't want to be like coaxing you and, oh,
Can you
please.
imagine anybody else like going to another therapist, you know, like a psychotherapist? Well, like with that same begrudging attitude of like, well, I don't really want to get any like healthier emotionally and mentally, but like if you can prove to me that you can make me like, you know,
No. Yeah.
it's just so weird.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
strange
For
like that.
sure.
But
And
so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've learned about yourself through this process because you know that you have the ability to channel. You have had some interesting experiences with beings from the other side. You know, maybe they were discarnated souls or whatever. Like, what else has happened? What else have you uncovered or understood or learned about yourself and your own gifts?
I'm still a work in progress, Chris.
Aren't we all? I
Yeah.
just recently discovered a whole new Claire, like in
Yeah.
the past month.
Oh, yeah.
It's scent. I
Oh,
can
okay.
yeah. What is it called? Claire Gustafson's Gust is that
Oh,
well,
it's
anyway,
more olfactory is
it's the
smell.
olfactory, but it's like the clair of that. So like clairaudient,
Oh, okay,
clairsentient,
cool.
clair, whatever the you know. I'm so
I
glad it's not mouth though. Taste, I would hate that. Um,
Are
because
you
I
like
love food.
smelling fragrances when they're not there and
Yeah.
stuff like that?
So, and I live in an area that's pretty famous for having lots of paranormal activities. But like, I'll just be out for a walk, and out of absolutely nowhere, I'll smell like old school 1950s hand soap, like the pink little,
Hmm.
like industrial kind of
Oh, I
stuff,
know what you're talking about. Yeah. I
Yeah.
can smell that right now as you were just
Just by
describing.
saying that. Yeah, yeah. Or like talcum powder with like perfume that they don't even make anymore. Like I'll smell that combination sometimes, you know. Um, the other day, out of absolutely nowhere, there's not a cigarette in sight. I smell tobacco, somebody smoking.
Mm.
Um, but I live nowhere close to anybody who like that. I would smell
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you know.
I
Um,
smelled the cologne that my grandmother used to wear all the time, and when there's like no one around at all, you
yeah.
know, like I shouldn't be smelling this right now. And I don't wear lots of perfumes or fragrances myself
So you
because
know that it's hers.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I know that it's
yeah,
hers. Or sometimes I'll smell roses and it's like middle of winter and nothing is blooming, but I'm just
yeah.
smelling roses. So
I'm not
yeah.
so sure if I like this one, but it seems to be here for the long haul. So I guess I have to make peace with it. But I did have like some past life regression experiences myself where I discovered I was doing this same kind of work in multiple lifetimes.
Oh, I believe
And I was
that.
going to ask you, like, what have you sort of stumbled upon any interesting information like that regarding, it doesn't have to be past lives, but just anything that's helping you now
Well,
in that regard.
um, you know, I, as far as past life regression sessions that I've had with myself, I've had two that were very vivid and I believe that they were past lives, and not something that I'm making up. So I'm a conscious channeler, and I'm also conscious when I go into trance. So I have
Okay.
to like really trust that what's coming up is from my subconscious and get my conscious mind out of the way and make sure I'm not
Right.
editing anything in any
Yeah.
way, because I personally, I don't go into the non-awareness state like most of my clients do, but I'm just a much more analytical, curious person, I guess. But it
Right.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It still works as long as I know that about
And I'm
myself.
similar, actually. I've never visually gone into a past life
Yeah,
experience where I'm there presently feeling it, but like the information will just come and go, tink,
yeah,
like there it is. Like suddenly I'll be like, oh, yeah, of course I remember that.
right.
Like as if it's always been there, but
Yeah.
it just got turned back on or something. Anyway, so yeah.
One past life that I had, I was hanged. And I've
Mm.
always had a problem with people touching my neck, or I wear like these V-neck shirts because I don't like
Mhm.
anything up here. I don't like turtleneck. Like nothing can touch my neck. I don't even want anything pointing towards my neck, my throat, you
We have
know.
that in common, actually.
Do we really?
Mhm,
Oh, and
yeah. As a
also,
kid, it was really bad. Like if I had to wear a turtleneck, I would rip them. I would be like,
yeah, I couldn't
I can't
stand
do
it.
it.
Could
Yeah.
not stand it. Ironically, I had thyroid surgery where they had to slit my throat and take out half of
Oh,
my thyroid. So
wow.
now I've got, you can't see it really well on camera, but I've got like
A little
a mark
scar.
here, the
Yeah.
scar, a surgery scar. So I've always had throat issues. I've always had things to happen around my throat or my throat chakra. Even just okay.
Now, as you're saying that, I'm swallowing and I'm like, my throat's saying, hi. Hi,
Yeah.
Stephanie, we hear you. It's getting like a little bit out. That's so
Oh,
funny.
I'll tell you about another something that's miraculous that happened to me, and nobody believes it, but it's
I
true.
bet I will.
100% true. So when my mom was pregnant with me, um, my older sister and I are 11 months apart, because it took my parents a long time to get pregnant with Angela. And as soon as they had her, the doctor's like, if you want to have any more children, you're at the most fertile right now. So try, so
Just do
because she
it.
was born
Yeah.
in January. Um, and actually I ended up being born in December of the same year. Um, but she was holding my sister in her lap, and she was with my aunt. We call we call her my aunt, but whatever. She, um, her best friend. And she was holding Angela, and she said, "Oh, Angela just like peed all over me. Can you take her and change her?" So she handed my sister to her friend, and she was 12 weeks pregnant with me, and her friend was like, she's like, "Julie, Angela is dry. She's not wet at all." And what had happened was her water broke with me, with me. Her water broke at 12 weeks, right? So she was working at a clinic at the time, and so she rushed to her clinic and saw her doctor, and
12 weeks. Wow.
12 weeks. So I guess
So
they
early.
did some kind of a ultrasound or something, whatever they had back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, the baby is still alive. It's in about is in an inch of water, or um what is that
Not
called?
enough.
Fluid, placenta fluid.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like an inch, but I was
Amniotic
little,
fluid.
amniotic fluid.
Amniotic.
That's
Yes.
it. But I was like maybe like the size of like, here's a crystal.
Like a peanut or
I was
something.
give you a visual example. I was probably like that size. I was
Right.
about, I was about that size, and I was in like about that much of fluid.
Okay.
Okay. And so normally what happens is that the body just naturally expels,
Hmm.
right, the fetus. You just have a natural miscarriage, but she wasn't miscarrying. And so and they're like, this is kind of dangerous. They're like, you probably should just go ahead and get an abortion. And but
No, not Stephanie.
yeah, I was like very close, very close. And she was like, well, because my parents wanted to have children and it took forever to have my older sister, my mom was like, well, I feel okay. Can we just wait and just see? And they're like, okay, we'll just wait. And what you need to do is go home, stay in bed, um, drink a glass of wine at night. Not
It was the
recommended now.
70s.
This
Yeah.
was the 70s. Not recommended now. And
Actually,
every
it was recommended to me even in the early 2000s when I started getting contractions early.
Oh,
Like they just
really?
said one, like what,
Just
in
one.
order to calm the contractions. It wasn't like
Right.
go on a bender, but yeah,
I've heard of beer so to help your breast milk, um,
interesting.
but whatever whatever. So she would drink a glass of wine every night. And they said in the morning, you have to call in your temperature. Every single morning when you wake up, you have to call in your temperature.
To make
If
sure
your
she doesn't have an
temperature
infection.
raises by 1 degree, we're going to abort. That
Wow.
was the agreement that they made. Like you can keep the baby, but right, if there's an
As long as
infection,
there's no indication of infection, right?
right,
Yeah,
right, because they wanted to make sure that her life wasn't in jeopardy either.
right.
And so she did that every morning and she was like, I'm fine. And my grandmother was saying rosaries for me and everybody was praying for me and everything. So I believe that played into it. Um, then she was paired up with another woman whose um, placenta broke later on in her pregnancy, like in her second trimester. So this was still her first trimester when I broke.
Hmm.
Um, and so she got paired up with this woman, and they're like, you're going to be partners with each other because the same thing has happened to both of you, and you're going to be each other's like support team and whatever. And so she supported this woman, and um, this woman's baby was born before me, and it came out like mentally and physically handicapped. Yeah. And so they were like, are you sure you don't want an abortion? Like they were like really trying to get my mom to abort me. Um, and she goes, no, I feel fine. And I just know that this baby is going to be fine. And I don't know how I know it. She goes, I just know that the baby is fine. And so she carried me almost to term. They actually took me like maybe 3 weeks early. I was supposed to be born in January, and I ended up being born in December, like
Hmm.
induced because they were getting nervous. But uh, I
So what's
came.
the part that people don't believe you about? That you were
They
almost
don't
aborted?
believe that. They think that maybe the sac or her womb just kind of leaked a little bit.
Oh,
They
I
don't
see.
believe that it gushed, and I was just in like 1 inch of because they said
Gotcha.
that's impossible. That cannot happen. That would be a medical miracle. And it's like, yes, I'm
It
a
sounds like
medical
you had
miracle.
several. Yes. Not just
Yeah.
that, but that you were a medical miracle for not just surviving, but surviving intact with
And
no
and three times,
disabilities, abnormalities,
three
defects.
times before the age of 4, I was hospitalized and weird random diseases. I had something where something was caught around my throat, and I would turn blue. I would turn like the color of a
Mm.
Smurf, and then they were going
Your
to go in
throat
and
again.
my throat. That's what I'm saying. My throat.
Yeah. Hmm.
They were going to go in and they were going to operate on it, but it was beating. Something was beating around it. And so my mom said,
Hmm.
well, that could be connected to her heart or her brain. Like, don't cut into, she's like, I don't want you to cut into that.
Right. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
never had that operation. And then miraculously that got straightened out on its own or through my grandmother's
Wow.
prayers. And then I had some sort of disease, random infection thing, whatever, that's rare. It's a rare thing where below my belly button to my feet with were just all bruised, just complete bruises all over, like black and blue, like someone had taken a meat cleaver and just pounded my
Wow.
skin from my belly down to my feet, like both legs, my feet, everything. I'm like 4 years old.
Wow. Wow. What we probably don't have time to go into it, but I'm so curious what it turned out to be.
Um, I don't know what it was called. In fact, there was not it's so rare. I don't even know if there's a name for it, but
I asked because I had a lifelong bleeding disorder up until just a few years ago, and I got rid of it with hypnosis.
oh,
But with this bleeding disorder, I had petechiae, which is where the capillaries underneath your skin burst, and I had bruising all over my arms and legs, but not on
Okay.
my torso. It's just arms and legs.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I looked like I had like a weird purpley rash everywhere all the time for a long
Okay.
time.
I don't know if it was the same thing or not, but what I do
Yeah.
know is that the doctors told my parents that it was cancer and that I only had a few months to live.
Oh my gosh.
That's so, um, so anyways, obviously it didn't end up being cancer. But later on in my mom's life, she was working and she had a employee or someone who worked in her office that had like that same condition. And this woman was like, she went to my mom. She was like, I have to quit because I've got this condition and I only have a few months to live. She already picked out her funeral dress
Wow.
and she was just accepting that she was going to die. And my mom was like, wait a minute, tell me again, describe to me your symptoms. And she did. And she was like, okay, I want you to call this doctor at this hospital and whatever, talk to him, blah, blah, blah. Because it sounds like exactly what my daughter had, and she was fine. And then it was exactly what I had. So
Wow.
weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
Coincidences. Yes.
That's why I've always thought, all right, I'm supposed to be here for a reason.
And your poor parents, how many times did they have to almost grieve the loss of you? Like
And
before
so
you were
many,
even born, and then multiple times after. And yeah.
so many times.
Speaking
And
of which, at some point we'll have to have another podcast too, because
yeah, for
there's so
sure.
much I would love to talk with you about. But I've had sessions with several people who have acknowledged that they have built-in exit points for leaving this
Yeah.
incarnation. And then I myself, I was listening to one of the Monroe Institute, Gateway recordings, and I realized that I also have several exit points and that I've actually skipped a few of them.
Yeah.
And then if I skip all the rest, I actually have a death date. I was able to see when that was. Like that's the last exit point if I choose to make it
Yeah.
that far.
Yeah.
Um, but what a fascinating concept. And so anyway, while I was in a state of, trance, and I was like, is this true of everybody? And the answer I got was yes. Yes, we
Yeah.
all do.
Yeah. I I knew about exit points through this community, through the spiritual, through the mediumship community.
Mm.
They talk about the exit points a lot, and so I know that we all have exit points. And I think I know exactly when. I think I have a lot of exit points. I think I know exactly when every single one of them was.
I have been through like six.
Yeah.
Um, Two of them were near death experience exit points. Like I
Mhm.
actually did die and
Yeah.
then came back. The other ones were near dying, not near death, but like I could have, like if, a
Right.
car coming at me, but then suddenly I swerve out of the way at the last minute kind of thing, those kinds of things, I've had
Yeah.
six
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Same. Same. And
Yeah.
I've had out of body experiences, but where I wasn't sick or anything like that, where it's like, oh, I'm having a near death experience, but then I'm not dying at all.
It's just, yeah, I actually used to have astral projection experiences, out of body experiences as a kid, just as a regular thing. I had this
Yeah.
imaginary friend who was an elf, and he would take me flying. Like he really
Oh,
would. He would like wake me up by knocking on my back. And sometimes it would annoy the hell out of me because I'd be like,
yeah.
I'm tired, drill feet, go away. I don't want to fly tonight.
Yeah, that just brings back memories too. Like I had well, the other thing, I was like a very weird, strange kid.
You? No.
I'm not totally different than how I am now. I was very shy and I had selective mutism. So begin with my throat.
Oh,
I
wow.
could not talk to people. I could not unless I really knew you and trusted you, like you were my parents or my siblings or my cousins or like a couple of friends that I had like in the neighborhood. But anyone else, I couldn't, I didn't raise my hand in class. When teachers
Wow.
would ask me, like blatantly ask me questions, I could think of the answer. I could not get it out of my
How long
mouth.
did that last till?
That lasted until about high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so all of elementary and middle school. And so I was just kind of like this quiet, shy, dorky looking kid with glasses and, the weirdo. And so I remember being like really lonely in elementary school. And I had this imaginary friend, like that would pop. It was like this little gerbil that would just like crawl up and down
Oh,
my arm when I was like in class working, and we would just like play.
that's awesome.
So,
I was a weirdo as a kid too, but I was like, because of my earlier childhood being raised in and around this commune, I
mhm.
didn't have, it wasn't that I lacked a healthy respect for authority. I had just never been exposed to authority.
Okay.
And so when I cycled into like, a public school system in Asheville, North Carolina, um, I had no respect for authority because I'd never had authority. So I got into lots of trouble and I was like
Okay.
labeled the bad kid and, all sorts of
Oh.
things like that.
See, I
Yeah.
had the opposite. I had the good girl syndrome. I was like, I have to be the
I
good girl.
might have if I'd even known that that was an option.
Yeah, but
I
with
didn't know.
the way I was raised, with in the church and with the nuns and
Right.
that, it was like, I'm this good, perfect girl. I have to be this good girl. I'm the good girl. I'm the people pleaser.
And
That
to
was
be
what I
seen and
had to
not
get over.
heard maybe got taken a little too
Yeah,
seriously at
yeah,
a cellular level for you, you know?
yeah. I really had to get over that. I really came out of my shell in college. Um, when I sort of reinvented myself because I got sort of pigeonholed in high school as just like, marginalized and whatever. And so I
Mhm.
just didn't feel like my true authentic self could come out because I just felt like everybody was making fun of me and didn't like me and whatever, whether they were or
Well, and
not.
it's also really difficult to fight perception when you have like a whole culture of people with a certain
Yeah,
perception. Yeah,
right.
it's hard to break out of that unless you, put yourself in a different situation with a
Yeah,
different
I was like,
culture.
so once I got to college, nobody knew me. I could reinvent myself and then become the person who I am today. But I had to get out of that where, I
Right.
had to get to the point where I didn't care about what other people thought of me. I didn't have to be the good girl anymore.
Right.
I can do what I love and enjoy. And then I started to find my voice and I started to stick up for myself. I mean, the selective mutism was so bad, Krista, that, um, like, let's say, we were at a like McDonald's or something and they didn't give me ketchup. I could not go up to the counter and ask for more ketchup. So I would get my
Wow.
sister to do it for me. So my sister was sort of my voice for anything that I wanted. Can
Wow.
you do this? Can you tell them that? Can you ask them that? And she got like pissed at me after a while. Like I'm not like being like the go-between anymore. Like you just have to
Right,
get over
right.
yourself and learn how to do it on your own. I couldn't talk to anyone on the phone. The
Wow.
phone was like my biggest like anxiety. I could not. If the phone, I couldn't talk to people. So
So did you have to do a whole bunch of like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral or anything to get over it? Or did you just decide like when you got to college, like, I'm just not going to be that girl anymore?
I decided I'm just not going to be that girl. And then
Ah,
I had to
that's so
test
powerful.
I pushed myself. I pushed
Yeah.
myself. I got a
I'm sure it
job.
wasn't comfortable, but like this is unfamiliar, but like still, I
Yeah.
mean, that speaks volumes because right there's a lot of people who believe that they are 100% an amalgamation of their past, that
Mhm.
whatever's happened in their past is who they are now. And I keep saying, like, no, it doesn't have to be. It's a choice. It
I'm
can be if you let it, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm definitely not the same person that I used to be. And then especially when I got a last name change, like when I got married, it was like, all right, Stephanie Caruso is over. I
Right,
love her. I appreciate her. She's
right,
great, but I'm not her anymore.
right.
Now I'm Stephanie Conkle. I'm like Snoop
I
and
did that too. My
yeah.
mom and I moved around a lot as a kid, but I went from Chrissy to Christy to Krista to Chrissa. And actually, I was Kristen at the very, very beginning, but
Oh,
I don't let
okay.
anybody call me that because it makes me think I'm in trouble. Because
Yeah.
the only time I hear it is in my head when I'm like in trouble, like Kristen Marie. I'm
Yeah.
like, so nobody's allowed to call me that. Of course, now I'm going to get lots of comments on a podcast calling me
And
that.
the name is so important, and your identity is so important.
I changed who I was each time we moved, and with each name, like trying it on, like not really changed who I was, but I was like, okay, well, when we left Asheville, I was like, I don't want to be the bad girl anymore. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of being like in trouble all the time. I got paddled because it was legal in the 70s to get paddled
Oh,
in North
yeah.
Carolina. I was like, I don't want to be paddled
Oh, I saw
anymore.
other people getting paddled. I was like, oh, that's not going to
Yeah,
happen to me.
it
I'm
was
going to like
no
toe the
fun.
line. I am not
Yeah.
getting paddled.
I
You know?
didn't want to be the one who was constantly blamed for everything, scapegoated and all that stuff. So when we moved, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the good girl now,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't succeed all that well because I didn't have any like thing to go on. But I was like, if I just kind of try to do the opposite of what I did before. So I wasn't even sure what I was doing wrong before.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
I know is I was getting in a lot of trouble for it. So yeah, I just got really quiet.
I would
I
say so
kind of did what you did, except that I was doing
it's
it very much on
opposite.
purpose. Hmm.
Opposite. And definitely I've gotten myself in trouble from speaking out and stuff like that, but it felt better to me to speak my truth, my authentic self, let people know how I feel and where I stand,
Yeah.
than to keep it all bottled up and then have people thinking that I'm something that I'm not. And
Yep. If
um
you don't speak up for yourself, then other people will do it for
that's
you.
right.
And what they have to say may not actually be what
Yeah.
are embodying.
That's
So
right. Also,
absolutely.
just like having to speak up for my children. I have a special needs son, and
Yeah.
a gay child, and it's like I have to speak up for and I have no problem speaking up for my children whatsoever. It's not even I don't give it a second thought. you know when it's for myself, of course it's
Yeah.
it's not as easy as it is to speak up for
Right.
your children, but I can do it. I can push myself, and every time I've pushed myself, every time there's a saying, and I actually have it written on my checks. Where are my checks? Anyway, but it says,
I'm just surprised you still use checks, Stephanie.
I mean, that's why I can't find them, because I
Because you
really
don't really
don't
use
use
them.
them anymore. But when I did use them, I really don't. Um, I wrote a check for a long time to pay for my office space, but now even that is digitized now. But it says, "Leap and the net will appear."
I love that.
And that was a
Yeah.
reminder. I had it on my checks because it's always like so like afraid around money and all of that with all my money ish,
Mm,
things. And so I was like, okay, just there's plenty, just there's the universe is abundant. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I can spend money and I can feel okay about it, and it'll come back to me, and just
yeah.
trust that,
I
right?
had a
Just
whole lot of that myself, so I get it. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always stuff that we're working through, um but yeah, back to the voice. I I just had strep throat year after year after year. I always had strep
We have
throat,
that in common too. Same.
laryngitis, everything. So it's always been,
Tonsillitis.
yep, tonsillitis, everything. And in the Catholic Church, there is a special saint day called Saint Blaise, where they bless your throat, and they put two candles over your
Oh,
throat,
wow.
and then the priest blesses you. And Saint Blaise is this priest, the saint. It was a female, I believe, that I can't remember. Something happened with her throat, and some miracle happened, and so now she's like the patron saint of throats. And so you could go up on Saint Blaise Day and get a healing or get a throat, a
Oh,
blessing.
wow.
So my parents,
What day is that? Do you
I don't
remember?
remember. I'll have to look it
I'll have to
up.
look it up.
It's
Yeah,
been a long time
that's
since I've
fascinating.
been in that tradition, but every single year I went and got my throat blessed, because that's always where my issue has been in my throat. I
Yeah,
light all when I light the chakra candles, the biggest, thickest one I have is the blue,
the
is
blue
the
one.
throat chakra.
Yeah.
So yeah, the blue one.
Well, you've come a long way, baby. So I'm so glad to have your voice now as part of a community that I'm involved in and
Yeah.
here today on the podcast. So thank you. It's been quite an honor just getting to know you better and just hearing all these great
Oh,
stories. We're
likewise.
definitely going to have to do this again.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and also you had helped me out with some money blocks and issues around prosperity that I was having a few months ago. And thank you for that because actually that I have worked through. I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be a little bit more to keep going with, but I've made some breakthroughs on it. And I'm just going to do a quick plug of me, of something that I've got going on, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to whatever you've got going on. But on February 22nd, so 222, I have a collaboration going with Lisa Morgan in Australia to do sacred currency, and it's just for women. So any guys listening, sorry, you're not included this time. But it's a 6-week program, and we're going to meet 3 times a week with these women to help burst through the money blocks and call in the prosperity. And I don't say abundance anymore, because when I was calling in abundance, I gained 20 pounds. I was like, apparently the cells of my body don't understand that there are different kinds of abundance, and not all of them are appreciated the
That's
same.
hilarious.
So now I call it prosperity.
Yeah.
But anyway, what do you have going on that we could invite people into your world? You've got something going on at Hypnotherapists coming up?
I have a few things going on.
Yeah.
So one thing is I'm coming out with a book that's called The Ultimate Power Within, and it's basically a book for just the general public to understand that they have this higher, wiser mind, right? And it introduces them to hypnosis and self-hypnosis, and then some techniques that they can do on their own to get in touch with their own higher self. So lots of exercises and stuff. That will be coming out hopefully May 15th is my target date for that.
We'll find it like on your website or on Amazon.
They will be able to find it on Amazon and on Facebook, and probably, I'm sure, my website too.
The Power Within by Stephanie Conkle.
The Ultimate Power Within.
The Ultimate Power Within. Okay, perfect.
I've got that coming up. If you're watching this overseas, if you're anywhere in Europe, I'm going to be teaching my Profound Somnambulism Protocol in Germany in June with Dr. Preetz. So,
that's exciting.
Yeah, so contact Dr. Preetz and sign up there.
And I'll make sure that we have all of your contact information attached to all of the various platforms that this podcast is going to be streaming on. So if you want to include that, just send me Dr. Preetz's contact.
I'll include all of that and the dates and all of that. It's going to be June. And from what I understand, it's not just people in Germany, but people from all over Europe attend Dr. Preetz's classes. And so he's really graciously invited me to come and teach my protocol. So I'm so excited about that.
That is exciting.
And then I'll be teaching it again at HypnoThoughts Live in July. So I have a post-conference class, and I'll just.
And that's a certification one, yes?
Yes.
Post-conference, okay.
Yes, that will be a certification.
And I highly recommend it. I took the Profound Somnambulism Protocol myself, and it was a game changer for me, because I had so much of Quantum Journeys hypnosis sort of already mapped out, just because it kept getting downloaded into my head. But what I didn't have was a reliable induction that I knew 99% of the time was going to get the client right where they need to be in order to get that direct voice, until I took PSP. So thank you. That was a huge puzzle piece for me.
My pleasure. That's why I teach this.
Yes, thank you. It was beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. Be sure to subscribe to this little podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're curious about some of these wild stories that we have, or maybe want to experience a session for yourself where you communicate with your own multidimensional consciousness, then reach out to either one of us. I have no idea where our rates are is in comparison to each other, but you know what? If you're out there and you're watching or listening to this, you'll probably be like, you know what? I feel really drawn to Stephanie or Krista, or maybe both. You could have a session with both of us, one and the other.
And if you don't have the funds, pray and then take the lead.
Yes. Or join Sacred Currency.
That's right.
February 22nd. In 6 weeks later, you'll have the funds. Actually, we just did like a little teaser of it last week, and 3 people already just got like unexpected money come in. So that was kind of cool.
Awesome.
Just from doing these. Yeah. People call it the law of attraction, but there's, as you know, there's a scientific basis to it. It's not just all woo-woo energy stuff. It's, when you have a certain perception of the world, then that's what you're going to see. And so
A
if your perception
reticular
is that there's
activating system,
yes,
baby.
exactly. So if you see the world through the lens of what's wrong or what's
Yeah.
missing, then you'll see a whole lot more of that. So we
Yeah.
work on changing that, and then it fills up your world with opportunities and choices instead. I'm not going to go into it too deep, but yeah. So Profound Somnambulism Protocol, the certification, post hypnothoughts. You've got the thing in Germany with Dr. Preetz in June. You said
yes.
Okay. And then you have a book coming out sometime when? Do we
I'm
know?
hoping
Approximately?
May 15th is the goal.
Okay.
It was going to be Valentine's Day, which would have been yesterday, but my father passed away, and actually May 15th is his birthday, so that's why I sort of changed it to that.
Oh, that'll be a nice way to honor him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bet he's on the other side doing a little jig, like, yeah, let's do it for my birthday.
And he's going to help me get this finished.
Yes. I have no doubt whatsoever.
It's finished. I just need it published now. So
right. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to write a book too, but I'm not at that point yet. So it's only been 4 years in the making.
Yeah. It comes out when it's supposed to come out.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Maybe you can help get me re-inspired on that. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we're going to end the podcast, and then I'm going to see you in a little bit because we get to have this session that you mentioned, which I wouldn't otherwise mention, but you had already said it.
I mentioned it.
I don't tend to out my clients.
I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So yeah, we will, those of you who are listening, watching, you've got all of the links below, and you can reach out to either one of us. You can also join the Quantum Journeys Facebook group. It is public, so just come on in. Stephanie's there too. So, all right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Well, thank you so much, my intrepid travelers. Did that last episode blow your mind? We journeyed deep into the intersection of quantum healing, the science of consciousness, hypnosis, and the metaphysical. And let's just say reality isn't always quite what it seems, is it? But fear not, there is much more to come. This is only just the beginning. Quantum Journeys podcast is your passport to mind-bending adventures where we push the boundaries of what is possible. So stay curious, stay open, and remember the power to change everything lies right there within you. We'll meet again soon on the Quantum Frontier. This is Krista Marie Bowman, your Quantum Journeys podcast host.